The auto industry just got hit with a data nuke, and it came from the last place anyone expected. Edmunds. Yeah, the calm, reasonable car review people just dropped a report that has executives pacing their offices at 3 a.m. Because this isn't just a chart update, it's a complete demolition of everything automakers thought they knew about pricing, demand, and what buyers actually want heading into 2025. Edmunds finally confirmed what car buyers have been screaming for years. Prices have officially snapped. Customers aren't just slowing down, they're walking away entirely. And the numbers are brutal. Listings are sitting longer than ever, incentives are exploding, and the old strategy of pumping out overpriced trims isn't just failing, it's actively sinking brands that thought they were untouchable. But the real shock isn't the slowdown, it's where the collapse is hitting hardest. According to Edmunds, the category bleeding the most isn't tiny budget cars, it's the ones automakers were most confident in. The can't-lose segments like compact SUVs, mid-trucks, and entry luxury crossovers. You know, the vehicles they've been stuffing with fake luxury, subscription features, and $5,000 markups. Edmunds' data shows consumers have simply checked out. They're voting with their wallets, and the vote is no thanks. And here's where the panic really starts. Edmunds found that more than half of new car shoppers are now cross-shopping used, not because they want to, but because they don't trust automakers to keep prices stable anymore. Yeah, the industry has officially broken buyer confidence. That's something you can't fix with a new trim package or a flashy EV ad. But the most explosive part of the report, the part that sent shockwaves through Detroit boardrooms, is what Edmunds calls the value inversion. For the first time in modern auto history, buyers say they're getting less value every year, even when the vehicle technically has more features. And no brand is safe. Not Toyota, not Ford, not Kia, not Tesla. The report basically says, consumers aren't stupid and they're done paying more for less. And this value inversion hit EVs like a sledgehammer. Edmunds' data shows EV demand didn't just cool off, it fell off a cliff. Range anxiety isn't the biggest problem anymore. It's pricing, insurance, and the simple fact that people don't want to gamble on depreciation. Automakers spent the last 5 years betting the entire industry on EVs, and now Edmunds is telling them the foundation is cracking faster than anyone predicted. What really stunned analysts, though, was the shift in brand trust. Edmunds found a massive surge of buyers returning to brands they abandoned years ago. Brands like Subaru, Mazda, and even Buick, simply because they appear stable. Meanwhile, companies that lean too hard into hype, price hikes, or political drama, they're experiencing one of the steepest trust drop-offs Edmunds has ever recorded. But the data drop keeps getting worse. And the next part of the Edmunds report is the kind of thing that makes CEOs cancel their weekend trips. They revealed that loan rejections are spiking, not because buyers have bad credit, but because lenders are suddenly terrified of the car market collapsing under its own weight. Banks don't want to finance a vehicle today that might be worth 20% less in 6 months. That's how unstable the market has become. And Edmunds practically spelled it out in bold letters. They also exposed a detail automakers tried desperately to keep quiet. Inventory is climbing faster than demand can absorb it. Lots are filling up again. Cars that once sold in hours are now collecting dust. And the most embarrassing part, even with huge discounts, dealerships still can't move certain models. Edmunds specifically highlighted mid-sized trucks, luxury EVs, and overly equipped SUVs as the worst offenders. That's a nightmare scenario. Too much supply, not enough buyers, and too little trust left to fix it. But the twist is what comes next. Edmunds found that buyers are finally pushing back with strategy. Shoppers are delaying purchases, watching price trends like hawks, and using data tools like never before. People are literally tracking price drops week by week, waiting for automakers to fold. This is the first time Edmunds has ever seen consumers behave like stock traders, and it's destroying the old sell it now dealership model. Another bombshell, loyalty is dead. Edmunds' data shows brand loyalty has crashed to a record low. People who once stayed with the same brand for 20 years are jumping ship the second a competitor offers a better deal. That's why you're suddenly seeing Toyota buyers going to Hyundai, Ford buyers going to Honda, and luxury buyers ditching German brands for anything that won't drain their savings. Loyalty used to be automakers' secret weapon, now it's gone. and they have no idea how to win it back. And then Edmunds pointed out the dagger automakers really didn't want highlighted. The trim package bubble has popped. For a decade, companies made money by upselling customers into higher trims, bundling useless features into $4,000 packages, and pretending every buyer wanted the premium tech version. Edmunds says that entire strategy is dead. Buyers want simplicity. They want base models, fewer screens, cheaper tech, and fewer gimmicks. But automakers built their entire business model around the opposite, and now they're stuck with expensive over-optioned vehicles nobody wants. The industry is scrambling, and Edmunds didn't sugarcoat it. They said automakers are facing a systematic correction, which is a polite way of saying the car market is entering a controlled crash, and it's not slowing down. Every month the data gets more alarming. But the most shocking, the most panic-inducing part of the report is what Edmunds uncovered about younger buyers. Edmunds discovered that younger buyers are rewriting the entire playbook, and automakers are completely unprepared for it. Gen Z and younger millennials aren't just delaying car purchases, they're actively rejecting the ownership model automakers rely on. Edmunds' data shows that a huge chunk of young shoppers would rather buy cheaper, older used cars or skip ownership entirely than take on a bloated car payment for a vehicle packed with features they don't want. And this terrifies the industry because these buyers aren't temporary budget shoppers. This is now their long-term behavior, and the reasons are brutal for automakers to hear. Young buyers told Edmunds they don't trust subscription features, they don't want giant dashboards, they don't want overpriced ADAS packages, and they definitely don't want $700 monthly payments for a crossover that depreciates like a dropped brick. They want durability, low insurance, easy repairability, and simple tech. If a car doesn't do those four things, they're out. This is basically the exact opposite direction automakers have been moving toward for the last 10 years. But Edmunds didn't stop there. They exposed another shift that has the industry in full panic mode: the return of mechanical value. Younger buyers are hunting for cars that are affordable to fix, proven over time, and trusted by the community. Cars like older Camrys, Civics, Corollas, Outbacks, and Tacomas are skyrocketing in demand, and Edmunds' analysts flat out said that these older models are outperforming brand new cars in buyer satisfaction. Imagine being an automaker and hearing that a 2012 Corolla is beating your latest $42,000 tech-stuffed crossover. Humiliating. Then came the part of the data that practically caused a meltdown in corporate offices. Edmunds said that the used market is cannibalizing the new market at a historic scale. People aren't climbing the ladder from used to new anymore. They're staying in used, upgrading within used, or buying lightly used instead of new. That breaks the entire life cycle that automakers depend on, because if consumers stay in used cars longer, automakers sell fewer new ones, and if they sell fewer new ones, they lose their biggest profit source. This is the kind of data that triggers emergency board meetings. But perhaps the most shocking detail in the entire Edmunds report is the collapse of what they call the prestige illusion. For years, automakers convinced buyers that owning a newer, pricier model made them more successful, more respectable, more premium. Edmunds found that younger buyers don't care about that at all. They care about freedom from debt. They care about not being scammed by hidden fees. They care about transparency, safety, and value. Prestige doesn't impress them. Reliability does. That is a cultural shift automakers never planned for. And right when you think the shocks are over, Edmunds drops another hammer. Insurance costs have become the silent car killer. Buyers aren't just walking away from new cars because of the sticker price. They're walking away because the insurance quote makes the entire purchase impossible. Edmunds' data shows insurance increases are now shaping buying decisions just as much as interest rates. And guess which cars are getting hit the hardest? EVs, luxury SUVs, and trucks loaded with expensive sensors. Exactly the vehicles automakers invested billions into. But the final twist in this section of the report is the one analysts are calling the beginning of the Great Correction. Edmunds says the market is now entering a phase where consumers dictate the terms, not automakers, not dealers, not banks. And this power shift is already rewriting the industry faster than any prediction model expected. And in the next section of the report, Edmunds reveals something even more explosive: the one trend that could force automakers to completely redesign their future lineups. The one trend that could force automakers to completely redesign their future lineups. The mass exodus from SUVs and luxury crossovers in favor of compact, practical, and repairable vehicles. Edmunds' data shows that for the first time in decades, buyers are actively trading down rather than trading up. Forget SUVs being the holy grail of profits. Buyers are choosing smaller, simpler cars that cost less to run, cost less to insure, and cost less to fix. And the industry isn't ready for it. All those billions spent designing oversized interiors, flashy tech, and inflated trims, suddenly they're irrelevant. But the disruption doesn't stop there. Edmunds uncovered that EV hype is hitting a brick wall, and it's worse than anyone imagined. The data shows first-time EV buyers are now questioning the value proposition harder than ever. Charging networks aren't expanding fast enough, used EV prices are plummeting, and federal incentives are getting confusing or delayed. People who rushed into EVs thinking they were future-proof are now sitting on depreciating assets worth far less than expected. Automakers are realizing that their EV gamble isn't just risky, it's starting to hurt their entire balance sheet. And here's a jaw-dropper. Edmunds found that price transparency tools are reshaping the market entirely. Buyers now enter dealerships armed with apps and real-time data that instantly reveal the true price of a car. That kills the old margin model. Dealers can't hide markups or manipulate monthly payments. Edmunds calls it the democratization of information, and it's crushing old-school sales tactics that relied on ignorance or scarcity. Then came the part that truly rattled Wall Street. The resale market is now king. Edmunds' data shows that vehicles that hold their value are suddenly the most influential factor in purchase decisions. Cars that depreciate faster are being avoided, even if they're new and feature-loaded. Buyers are no longer impressed by infotainment systems, fancy displays, or gimmicky AI features. They are laser-focused on what the car will be worth in 3 to 5 years. And that's a brutal reality check for automakers that relied on rapid turnover and inflated MSRP pricing to survive. And Edmunds didn't hold back on calling out the biggest victims: luxury automakers, overhyped EV startups, and brands that ignored the core needs of practical buyers. The report paints a picture of a market where consumer intelligence is now faster than corporate strategy, and brands that can't pivot to simplicity, value, and trust will face years of shrinking sales, mounting inventory, and collapsing loyalty. And just when you think it couldn't get any worse, Edmunds throws in a detail that's sending shockwaves through every boardroom from Detroit to Tokyo: the emerging used EV paradox. Buyers want EVs, but they want them cheap, and the resale values are tanking so fast that it's killing first-time EV purchases. This isn't a minor trend. Edmunds says it could fundamentally stall the entire EV rollout if automakers don't adjust pricing and incentives immediately. The report is essentially a blueprint for a market reset. The question now is, can automakers act fast enough? Or are we about to witness a historic shakeout that will redefine which brands survive and which disappear forever? And just wait until you hear the next part of the Edmunds data, where they reveal exactly which brands are about to be crushed and which are secretly thriving. And here's the kicker: Edmunds doesn't just talk about the market in general, they call out specific brands that are tanking. And the list is brutal. Legacy automakers that relied on hype and luxury add-ons are bleeding market share faster than analysts predicted. Some of the names you'd assume are untouchable, they're the ones sliding hardest. Meanwhile, a few unexpected brands are quietly thriving, quietly stealing sales by focusing on what buyers actually care about: reliability, value, and transparency. This isn't a subtle shift. It's a seismic realignment. The industry's old hierarchy is collapsing, and the safe bets are no longer safe. Edmunds also highlighted the regional split in buyer behavior, which is shocking. Urban buyers are going smaller, more efficient, and more tech-light. Suburban buyers are still buying SUVs, but only if the price feels reasonable. And rural buyers, they're doubling down on trucks and utility vehicles that actually hold value, not the overpriced trims stuffed with unnecessary gadgets. Automakers that ignore these regional trends are already hemorrhaging sales, and Edmunds says that mismatch between product and market is the reason some models are now unfixable in terms of profitability. And then there's the electric vehicle bombshell. Edmunds' data shows that even brands with heavy EV marketing are struggling to move units because of high sticker prices, rising insurance, and the growing awareness of depreciation. Buyers are learning fast that the resale value of EVs is far lower than promised, and they're rethinking their entire purchase. Edmunds calls this the EV trust collapse, and if it continues, it could stall EV adoption for years, even in markets that are supposed to be EV friendly. But the part that really sent shockwaves, Edmunds uncovered the dramatic rise of used car dominance. Buyers aren't just delaying purchases, they're actively choosing used over new, often opting for certified pre-owned models that are cheaper, lower risk, and provide almost the same tech. This shift is eroding automakers' primary revenue streams because the used market is capturing the profits that once went to new car sales. In fact, Edmunds predicts that this trend could rewrite financing, leasing, and insurance structures entirely in the next 24 months. And here's something the report makes crystal clear: loyalty is dead, and it's permanent. Brands that spent decades building customer attachment are seeing it evaporate in real time. Edmunds' data shows younger buyers will switch brands for a better deal, a better warranty, or even just a simpler, less gimmicky option. Those who thought brand recognition alone would protect them are in for a rude awakening. But the next part of the Edmunds data is the most alarming. They reveal exactly which models are now toxic for dealerships. Vehicles that no matter how much you discount, customers simply aren't buying. And it's not just obscure models, some of them are the industry's supposed cash cows. Automakers are facing a harsh reality. They can't manufacture their way out of this problem. It's not about volume, it's about value, trust, and alignment with what consumers actually want. And the story doesn't stop there. Edmunds also warns that the next wave of market disruption is coming from tech-savvy buyers and digital tools. Shoppers are now entering dealerships fully armed with real-time pricing data, depreciation estimates, and competitor comparisons. This information power is completely shifting the bargaining table in favor of buyers, and dealerships are struggling to adapt. Edmunds calls it a buyer empowerment tsunami, and brands that can't respond will be left behind. And in the next shocking revelation, Edmunds digs into which automakers are secretly thriving in this chaos, and why some brands that everyone thought were doomed are actually building stealth momentum. Edmunds' data doesn't pull punches. They name the brands quietly thriving in this chaos, and the reasons are crystal clear. Subaru, for example, is quietly dominating in reliability and resale value, and younger buyers are flocking to models like the Outback and Crosstrek because they check all the boxes: affordable, dependable, and practical. Mazda is another surprise winner. Edmunds notes that Mazda's emphasis on simplicity, efficiency, and driving enjoyment is turning former skeptics into loyal fans. Even brands like Buick, which most people assumed were relics, are quietly climbing back because they've prioritized value, warranty, and lower cost trims over flashy gimmicks. Meanwhile, the brands that everyone thought were untouchable, they're bleeding badly. Luxury automakers that push tech-heavy trims without considering long-term ownership costs, think bloated SUVs loaded with unnecessary sensors and subscription features, are seeing massive drop-offs. Edmunds reports that models which were expected to be cash cows are now sitting on lots for months, forcing huge discounts and tanking margins. Some EV startups are in even worse shape as the depreciation of used EVs is undermining first-time purchases and scaring off potential buyers. Edmunds also highlighted the silent killer trend for automakers: misaligned incentives. They found that while dealerships are desperate to move inventory, consumers are now fully aware of true market prices. Buyers are using apps, online pricing tools, and resale data to negotiate aggressively. The result? Traditional dealership markups and tricks that used to generate profit are collapsing. The playing field has flipped, and it's all on Edmunds' radar. Another shocking detail: Edmunds predicts that the entire compact and mid-size SUV segment is about to get decimated if automakers don't adjust pricing and simplify options immediately. The models most at risk are those over-engineered, over-trimmed, or overpriced. Consumers are voting with their wallets, and the message is clear: stop the gimmicks, stop the inflated pricing, or get left behind. But here's the part that really gets the pulse racing. Edmunds warns that the next wave of disruption isn't coming from electric vehicles or luxury brands. It's coming from younger, digitally savvy buyers redefining the rules. These shoppers are armed with data, willing to wait for deals, and refuse to be manipulated by hype. Loyalty is dead. Subscription features are dead. Overpriced tech packages are dead. The consumer is now in full control, and the auto industry's old playbook is officially obsolete. And then Edmunds drops the final jaw-dropping revelation in this section: a hidden winner in the market no one saw coming. Brands that focus on simplicity, value, and reliability are quietly thriving even as the giants struggle. It's a brutal reminder that the industry can no longer survive on brand prestige or flashy tech alone. Consumers are smart smarter, savvier, and more ruthless than ever, and Edmunds' data proves it. Edmunds doesn't just diagnose the problem, they outline what automakers must do to survive this new era. First and foremost, simplify. Over-engineered trims, flashy but useless tech packages, and subscription-based gimmicks are dead weight. Buyers want simplicity, transparency, and true value. If a car doesn't deliver durability, low cost of ownership, and resale confidence, Edmunds says it won't sell. That's the new rule of the game, and brands that ignore it risk vanishing from relevance. Next, Edmunds stresses pricing discipline. Gone are the days when automakers could hike prices every year without backlash. Shoppers are watching every dollar, tracking depreciation, and comparing models across brands in real time. Overpriced vehicles aren't just losing sales, they're destroying trust. According to Edmunds, companies that fail to adjust pricing to match perceived value will face inventory pileups, forced discounts, and shrinking margins faster than ever before.